stand by for action.
Thanks for joining me. My name's Dave Miller. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. Now, in a recent show, I talked to you guys about extremism and about how this word is being used as a tool by governments to silence critics of things like Islam and progressivism. I told you about a 14-year-old boy who had an anti-terror scheme used against him to brainwash him and bring him back into the progressive fold. And I also told you about how the British government has hired a major advertising agency, Saatchi, to put forward counter-arguments against those who are protesting the Islamization of the United Kingdom. And I warned that such things could happen here in the United States of America. And I'm talking to Jan Reddy from the UK because we're going to cover some other issues that involve extremism, but this is an extremism on the part of governments. How far will a government go to silence its own people when outrages of violence are being committed against them? Now, Jan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dave. It's good to be here.
All right. Now, you've been a member of the English Defense League for a long time.
Yes.
And I want people in the United States of America to understand well what can happen when a government decides to use extreme measures against its own people. Now, you Americans remember what happened with the Tea Party movement and the fact that the IRS was used during the Obama administration as a weapon against members of the Tea Party movement. And Lois Lerner was retired with pension and never jailed or penalized for the things that she did involving all of that. Well, the same thing goes on in the UK, and it can get pretty bad. Now, Jan, can you give people a little bit of a background of how it's been for yourself and for members of the English Defense League since the organization began to point out the violence perpetrated by the Muslim community on the non-Muslim community in the United Kingdom? What has the government's response over there been?
I'll speak for demos here. Demos I have been to, the violence comes from Muslims and the lefties. It is increasing. Kind of at the beginning, we didn't have so much of that. We had the lefties throwing and hurling abuse, and as we've mentioned in the past on a prior radio program, the one in Nottingham last year, they were throwing hypodermic needles at us. Used ones, I may add. This is just typical of what the lefties do, but this time in Nottingham they invited the BLM, which did not exist in the UK until the problems resulting from the BLM in the United States. All of a sudden at Nottingham in the summer there, we had the leftist blacks of the UK decided to call themselves BLM and wore the same kind of outfits, black masks, black hoods, etc., the same as the lefties do. Predominantly cowards because they don't show their faces. And again, the usual Muslims, the ones who shout they're going to kill us, take over our country, and nothing appears to happen to them. However, we march along, do our thing, try to bring attention to what Islam is, how it's turning our country around, and the police seem to be on their side. Now, I've always said the way they are has got to be a direct order from up high, i.e. Downing Street. It had to be. Because why would they treat us like this? We're patriots. Non-violent, no longer silent. That was part of the EDL term that we used. We're not racist, we're not violent, and we're no longer silent. And that was the EDL. However, the attacks that we've sustained over the years has been getting worse, I must admit, and now we've got hypodermic needles. There's videos out there where they have picked up tables and things from outside public houses in the summer and thrown them at us, and it seems to be us that gets arrested. So many people arrested at this demo, but over the years it's changed a bit because some of them are now getting arrested because of the violence, but they never say they're left-wing or Antifa. They never say that. They say EDL demo, 50 arrested or 20 arrested.
You're talking about the British press, of course.
Oh, of course, yes. And this is how they word it. They never mentioned that it was non-EDL that was arrested, although in the past it has been the EDL arrested because they have been attacked. Not by the lefties, not by the Muslims, not by BLM. They've been assaulted by police officers. Now, I have witnessed this in my hometown, Birmingham. Although I don't live there, I do go to demos there. We were linked arms walking down the street, and 6 coppers in front of us, 6 police officers in front of us. One took out his baton and smashed it across the head of a guy which was 2 people away from me. Now, if I hadn't seen that with my own eyes, I could have thought to, and said, well, he must have done something. I actually know he did nothing. It ended up not a pleasant day, but it was instigated by the police officers. And there has to be videos, because everywhere we go, if you think a director like Spielberg has got cameras, you want to see what our police force has got. They are unbelievable cameras. They are on roofs of high buildings, down on us when we're doing demos. It's just unbelievable. You can have 20 cops on rooftops with cameras. This is how it goes. And it's been like that from the beginning. I have never seen cameras like it. They can film from miles away, I would imagine. Not only that, in the past, we have had the odd police officer. They're not allowed to really give any signs. You can look up and you can see an older guy maybe wink at you, and it's not flirtatious wink. It's like him saying to you, I'm with you. And you do get the odd one like that. You don't get it out of the youngsters. Some of them are like bullshit. And even worse than this, guys, they are now putting the Muslim coppers out there, pushing us back, dictating where we go, what we do, what we don't do. And you see a young officer in charge, like a chief superintendent or whatever, with pips on his arms, probably about 27 years of age, Muslim. Men with 22 years service don't get that rank. They're still police constables. They're pushing them through the ranks. I know that. I've seen it. I also will not ever take orders from a Muslim police officer. They don't recognise my religion. I don't recognise theirs. This is a Christian country. This is what we contend with, and we still keep the peace. We don't want violence. We want people to know what's been going on with our girls, what's been happening, what their agenda is. We have had over 1 million girls, young girls from the age of 9 upwards, systematically raped, some as many as 60 men in a night. Most of these girls are from care homes. Why are they from care homes? Because they have no parents to watch over them. We have social services to watch over them. Some have even been known in the past to hire taxis to take these girls to the Muslims. This is the state we're living in. This is why the EDL does what we do. There is a demo next week in Rotherham where over 1,400 girls were groomed and raped, sodomized, abused, cigarette burns stuck in them, torture, tied down to beds, raped, sodomized by several Muslims at a time. It's unbelievable how we're supposed to stay silent over this. What the government once said was, somewhere along the line, we can't let this out because there might be repercussions. There might be some backlash. And that's what they're scared of. That's what my country and most of the countries I believe in the West are scared of. A backlash from the indigenous people of those countries. It's like our hands are tied. Yep.
Well, tell me, there have been raids against the homes of EDL members.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that you have said in the past that it was even worse when it first began. Tell me about those.
Well, at the very beginning, when we were online, because this is how it all happened, when we first saw that there was this organisation called the EDL, so you got to go and meet them to even be accepted, because we have so many lefties that infiltrated at the beginning pretending to be patriots. And because of this, you could get up and log on of a morning and so many people you would see reporting that their friend had the doors crashed in the night before. At 2 a.m. in the morning, they would take the computers, they would take their phones, and they would be charged with whatever they thought about charging. We have got so many sections that we can be charged on. Section 14, Section 28, I don't even know what they mean anymore. So we became very, very suspicious of people online. So what we had to do there was we had to go to demos. We had to meet the people to be accepted. Different groups on the internet, different pages, different sections of the internet where you could talk openly without the fear of a troll being involved. However, there were trolls that were everywhere. I think I spent about 18 months never looking at Facebook. I was going into people's accounts that wasn't locked down to see who their friends were, to see what they said months before, a year before, if you go that far back, if their accounts were kind of locked down, you had no chance. But we did wheedle them out. I dare say we've got still a few out there, what we call trolls. We did wheedle hundreds out, and it kind of relaxed more. And because of all the years passing now, when we are at demos, we welcome new people, of course we do. But we recognise each other from years back, from when it began. And we've still got this one hell of a battle in front of us to make people see what's going on. Because let's face it, if you're an elderly person or a young person, or you're not inclined to be on the net, on social media, then you don't learn a thing, because the media covers it up. They never mention anything. Our televisions, even international news, they do not talk about Muslims. They never use the word Muslims. They never use the word Asians anymore. They used to. Now it's a Brit or a Dane or a Swedish guy. It's never a Muslim who does these atrocities, who does this terrorism. It's never mentioned. This is the battle we've got. You know, if you're not on the net, you can't trust the papers and you cannot trust the television. They're not telling you anything. It's very difficult.
Exactly. And that's something else I want to get into, listeners, which is that the government response to the righteous anger that people have in the United Kingdom to the activities of the Muslims that are already there is, it's difficult to find a word for it. Medieval is the best word that I can come up with to describe their response to the actions of the people. And let me assure you guys that Rotherham, the place that Jan is talking about, is just the tip of the iceberg. This is going on all over the United Kingdom. Wherever there is a significant population of Muslims, this is going on. It's going on in cities like Telford and Rochdale and other places of that nature.
And Germany is just, in the last couple of years, experiencing the same. And the police will cover up. There's a growing enthusiasm by authorities, not only in Britain, but in the West, to prosecute people who are judged to have broken the law by being racist or writing about it or saying anything about it. The enthusiasm is fueled by the adoption of political correctness, the elite ideology of the day. Anyone in a position of power, influence, is forced on pain of being cast from such circles. We're called racists. We haven't got the power. They put us in a vice-like grip. If you admit to being a patriot and being on the streets when you're arrested for being at a demo, regardless of if you've stepped out of line, they'll keep you long enough for you to admit that, yes, you're a racist, just to get out of the police station. And that's when they've got you. That's when you can lose your job. That's when you're unemployable. It's put down as a non-crime hate incident.
Right.
And you're logged into a computer. And once you're logged into that computer with any links, the police will drag that record up, and it just gets worse. Even if you've done nothing, it lays heavy in the mind of that person. When you're in certain jobs, which are most jobs now, they do a search on you. And if you have one incident involving the police, you will not get that job. Even if you are just a patriot and been caught up and the police have thrown you in the back of a van, then you're unemployable, quite frankly. So this political correctness is a very dangerous thing. It's like a vice-like grip on the whole nation, not just the UK, but it's spreading across Europe. And now the Canadians are seeing the very beginning of it, of what we've endured.
Well, it is, and this will creep over into the United States of America. And I just want to caution people here, because you may think, all right, well, we've elected Donald Trump as president of the United States and he's going to fix everything. Let me assure you guys that it's the policy, not the man. Donald Trump is only one man. He's not Jesus. He can't wave his magic hand and make everything all right. He can only do so much. It is going to be up to us to pressure our lawmakers to do something about Islam in our countries before it's too late, before we reach this point. Now, I'm going to play an interview that Paul Watson made with Tommy Robinson, the former leader of the English Defense League. And then after that, we're going to make a few comments, and I'm going to read another story.
Tommy, the BBC reports that a man who placed bacon on the doors of a Bristol mosque has died in prison. This was about a week ago now, while serving a 12-month sentence. His name is Kevin Crean. They're saying it's not suspicious. What's the latest on this story?
He was sentenced to 12 months, as you've said. He put bacon on a door handle. I get hugely, when I think about this case, obviously, you know, I've been in custody many times over the last 6 years. He would have been so worried, so scared, so intimidated. The crime doesn't fit the punishment at all. It just doesn't fit. He was used as a scapegoat to instill fear into everybody else. Now, putting bacon on a mosque door handle, pretty stupid thing to have done. Yeah, pretty stupid thing to have done. Does it warrant a year in jail? Especially when we compare it, the same judge that sentenced him to 12 months in jail only sentenced a Somalian to 24 months in jail for raping a young English kid. So this case specifically, and specifically because some of your viewers, if you don't understand what it's like in the British prisons, just briefly, British prisons are now like ISIS training camps. When you get in there, the main gang, the only gang in control of everything is the Islamic gang. And they're radicalising, they're recruiting, and they're enforcing Sharia with violence. They're taking jizya money, they're taking tax money off non-Muslims to stay safe. You have to really, until I went into prison, I don't think people on the outside can quite really understand just how bad it is in there. So having been in there and knowing that this man has been sentenced for something that would be seen as against Islam, I know the fear he would have faced and the gangs that would have wanted to target him. Now, yes, he has been found dead. The point I make is whether that was him being murdered, whether he killed himself, whether he got addicted to drugs, because another thing in our prison system, you should only send people there if it's going to benefit, if it's going to be some sort of rehabilitation to them, because our prison system doesn't attempt to rehabilitate you. It doesn't attempt to do anything. It's full of drugs. It's full of violence. Now, this man's crime just didn't fit that. It doesn't fit or warrant that. So whether he's gone to prison, I know men myself who I've grown up with in Luton who have gone into prison complete clean, never taken drugs. They've come out drug addicts and heroin addicts from prison. And when people are at their weakest and at their lowest, they're easy prey and they're vulnerable. And I'm still outraged. I know he's getting buried next week. I've had contact with his family.
Most people don't know, Tommy, there's a huge Muslim prison population, not just in the United Kingdom, but basically in every major European country. We're talking about Belgium. They got a 6% Muslim population, a 45% prison population, Muslim males. France has a Muslim population of 6 to 10%. They have a prison population of 70% Muslims. Spain has a Muslim population of 3.7% and a prison population which comprises 70%. That's 70, not 17. So finish up your comments with Kevin Crean, but also, you know, given that we're told Islam is this religion that teaches young men to be pious and disciplined, why do so many of them end up in prison?
Well, the other thing is we're completely losing a war, which many people don't even understand is being fought. Whoever controls the streets controls the town. So I've watched through my years as a youngster in my hometown of Luton, you'd have some very rough estates. You have a rough estate where there would be a fight back against the Islamisation, against the heroin gangs, against the sexual exploitation. In this predominantly white and black estate, they would fight back. What then happens is the most prominent gang members end up in prison from these estates, which aren't Muslim, they're white and black. Then when they're in prison, they radicalise, they convert. I mean, everyone converts, you don't understand. Like, no one really understands the scope of the problem unless they go there and see what's happening. Everyone is converting. So now, the difference we're at now to 10 years ago in Luton is all the young gang members, even in the non-Muslim areas, are now Muslim. They're white, they're black, they're converted, they're part of this one ummah, this one big gang. And then the resistance in those estates to tackle and stop what was happening is gone. It's gone. And people don't even understand the concept of this is organised. This prison radicalisation, this prison conversion, all of these things are organised. There's actually a price. If Muslims convert a prisoner in jail, they get sent money into them. They get sent money in. And the level of and the scope of the problem in the prison, I was in a maximum security prison called Wood Hill. Wood Hill houses some of the country's most feared terrorists. Now, a non-Muslim had been in an altercation in a jail in the other end of England, yeah? He'd been transferred out for his own safety because he was going to get violently attacked. Now, literally, the next morning he walked into this prison in Wood Hill, and within seconds, he was violently stabbed. Now, the prison officer said, the prison guard, the officer said, the only way that message could have got that quickly from there to there is through the imam. The only way they could have passed a message to get him for messing with Muslims or messing with Islam was through the imam. And the prison authority knew that. They knew that the imam is going around telling people there's a man coming here, he's done this, get him. And that's happened, I've watched most recently again, and non-Muslims are being fed like lambs to slaughter across our prison system. And until one of them are brutally murdered and butchered or even beheaded in a prison, that's when people may want to stop and try and start and do something about it. But most recently, I don't know if you saw the case up in Rotherham, where we had the protesters, where 19 Muslims were arrested and put on trial for attacking a pub. Well, the 19 Muslims got off because their community come together, every left-wing activist, politician, all of them fought for their defence. 5 non-Muslims were put in jail for exactly the same case. If you watch the footage, they did nothing. They got attacked. They were put in prison for the same case. I follow every comment and what's going on to see if they're okay. All of them have been violently beaten. All of them have come under attack. And that's happening across our prison system. Exactly the same happened with me. Just handed to them on a plate. Hand it to them. Hurt him. Do what you want to him. Now, and that's exactly what with Kevin Crean. He should never ever forget. Even if he has died, that's the judge's responsibility. But how can we have a man in the UK? How can we have an English man put in prison for 12 months? When if the prisons were safe, then that's not right. But when the prison system, the authorities, the governors, the politicians, everyone is fully aware of just how bad the problem is with Islam in prison. And yet still we put this man in there for putting a bit of bacon near a mosque. It disgusts me. It's contempt. And I'm so outraged that every single person who played their part in that, which mainly is a non-Muslim judge, who's handed him on a plate to them. Handed him on a plate. And my thing that frustrates me about it is I know how terrified he would have been because I was terrified. So I know the fear he would have had. I know the fear his mum would have had because my mum had the same. I know the fear his whole family would have had and worrying every night about whether he's going to be okay, whether they're going to get him today, whether today's the day he gets hurt. And he's ended up dead.
We all know that prison is prison. It's not Club Med. And you risk getting beaten up. You're going to be tested as to how tough you are and all of that. We know this. It's prison. Okay, it's the joint. But patriots tend to get specially bad treatment by Muslims in these institutions. And Tommy Robinson pointed this out very well. And there has been another incident that happened late last year that I want to draw special attention to here in the United States, because it's one you probably haven't heard about. I think it's been mentioned on Fox maybe once or twice, but that's one news outlet, and if you didn't happen to see these 1 or 2 programs, it completely went by you. Now, this is an incident where a man was not just beaten up in prison by Muslims, which is basically a hate crime in and of itself, but he actually died. And I'm going to read this, and then Jan, I'd like you to make a comment or 2 on it if you would, okay? This is by Joseph Curtis, who is reporting for the Daily Mail, published on December the 30th, 2016. All right? And the headline for this is, "Man jailed for leaving a bacon sandwich outside a mosque is found dead in prison halfway through his 12-month sentence." A man jailed after leaving bacon sandwiches outside a mosque has been found dead in his cell. Kevin Crean, 35, was halfway through a 1-year prison sentence he received in July after admitting the racially motivated attack on the Jamia Mosque in Bristol earlier this year. He was accompanied by Allison Bennett, age 46, and Mark Bennett, age 48, and Angelina Swales, age 31, who also pleaded guilty over the incident. A St. George flag with the words "No Mosques" was also tied to the fence outside the building in Tottendown, Bristol, and racial abuse was shouted at a worshipper. Sidebar, as I say always, people, Islam is not a race. Back to the story. Bacon was tied to the door handles, and sandwiches made of raw meat and sliced white bread were left at the entrance in what was described in court by a judge as an attack on England. The prison service confirmed Crehan was found dead in his cell at HMP Bristol on Tuesday, December the 27th. A spokesman told The Sun HMP Bristol prisoner Kevin Crehan died in custody on Tuesday, 27 December. As with all deaths in custody, the Independent Prisons and Probation Ombudsman will investigate. Crehan was jailed for a year, while the two Bennetts were given 9-month and 6-month sentences, and Swales was given a 4-month sentence, both suspended for 2 years. They were all banned from going within 330 feet of a mosque anywhere in England or Wales for the next 10 years.
That would be quite difficult. They're everywhere.
It would be, yes. And that's all of the story. And I don't know about you, Jan, but I've heard nothing of the investigation from the Ombudsman as to how Kevin Crehan died. I've heard nothing of a coroner's inquest. I've heard nothing of any investigation conclusions or anything else. What are your comments?
Neither have I. I would have found it somewhere because I'm connected with his friends. I can't ever remember meeting him personally, but I did recognise his one picture when he was younger, so we've probably been at the same demos, but I have friends that were supposed to him. But no, I've heard nothing as yet. It's a sad case.
All right, yes, it's a sad case, and there it stands, people. You heard this also in the interview with Tommy Robinson. Now, in the first place, in my opinion, this individual should not have been given a year in prison for simply stating his preference that Islam not be allowed in the United Kingdom. Now, could he have stated it better? Well, possibly. But a year in prison is not the way to go. However, the government of the United Kingdom does not mind using extreme measures to silence its own people when it comes to wanting to promote Islam, which is what they want to do. All right, this man was put in a prison with Muslims already there, and let me emphasize this, guys, because this is something that goes on in the United Kingdom that you may not be aware of. When I say prison, I don't mean county jail. Now, back here in the States, people can receive sentences of 6 months, 9 months, even a year in county jail. They don't enter into our actual state prisons. Now, Jan, clue me in on this. When people go to prison in the UK, even if it's for an offense that they get sentenced for only a year, they go into the big house. They go into the regular prison with people who have committed murder and everything else. Am I right?
Yeah, they have different wings for murderers and child molesters and paedophiles, but there's that many of them now, whether there's an overflow. And plus, some of our prisons are not run by the state anymore. We have independent security teams. I'm not sure about where Kevin was, but they're not real prison officers. They are, as we knew them in the past, like policemen, like firemen, prison officers. They were all trained in that particular field.
So we're not just talking about what we would have over here in the States, which would just be like a county jail or something like that.
No, this would be a prison. We don't have the only jails we have are in police stations, and you're only in there for a day or 2 days. But going back to Tommy Robinson now, he was the leader of the EDL for many years. He started the EDL. When he went to prison many times for his beliefs, they threw him in amongst Muslims who knew who he was. He's known throughout the UK. His photographs, films, everything was everywhere, but they put him amongst Muslims. Now, why would they do that? They didn't segregate him. They didn't look after him, because it's like as though it's some kind of sick penance that our patriots have got to put up with. And another thing, while we're on the subject of this, to get 12 months for a bacon rasher on a mosque, when you put that against what the Islamists in the UK get up to, what they do, they get bail for rape. They have had bail for rape jihad and skipped the country or stayed in the country and donned a burqa. This is the truth. This is how it happens. But you know what, folks out there, if you are a patriot and you've done nothing wrong and you're at a demo and the police nab you, never admit racism. One, you're not a racist. You're not there about race. Islam is not a race. We have blacks, we've had Chinese, we have Sikhs, we have had people from the black community walking with us. It is about Islam and the Islamization of my country. That's what we're doing. That's what we're marching about. And of course, all the hundreds of thousands of girls who have been victims of rape jihad. When you're picked up by a police officer, when you're arrested, put in the back of a van, took to a station, never admit guilt. If you've done nothing wrong and the only thing they can have you on is marching and belonging to a demonstration, they cannot do a thing about you. But they put pressure on. They put pressure on so that people want to get out of there and they admit guilt. And once you've got that racism tag against you, they've got you. But if you fight back and you say, no, I am not a racist, I am not going to plead to a lesser charge, I'm not going to admit anything, chances are they'll let you go. But if you go for the soft option, it's not a soft option whatsoever, because you're going to lose your job.
Now, Jan, this is important. This is really important, and I don't want to interrupt you, but this is very important to the point that I'm trying to make here. Because what happens when they're pressured to do this by interrogators in your police stations, for instance, is that suddenly their public record, their permanent record. Remember those Americans? Remember those when the principal would tell you, oh, this is going on your permanent record? This is real in the UK. This is what happens when people do a background check for a job, as Jan said. Jan, what you're saying is that a person's, basically their public DNA, their public persona, is blackened to the point where they're unhireable, also to a point where they could lose their children if they happen to have them from a custody battle, almost to a point where they become a non-person. This is how far your government will go. Am I correct in this?
Yep. If you're threatened by those with power and influence, you've got to show that you're not afraid, and you've got to show you're not intimidated by these powers, or they'll ride over you. If you admit anything, you're in big trouble. But if you show those that are harrowing you that you are coming out fighting, that's your best chance of neutralizing the accusations of racism and anything else.
Well, and I can't think of a better way to end this program, guys, because this is something that we could be facing very soon here in the United States of America. Don't believe that Trump or anyone in any office is going to fix this, because it's in the UK. It's in their faces. You have people now actually dying in prison, and we don't know that Kevin Crehan was killed by Muslims, but we also don't know that he wasn't killed by Muslims. What we do know is that he was put in a prison with Muslims, and we do know that there is a solution for this, which is to house Muslims in separate prisons from non-Muslims. That is a way to resolve a lot of these problems. Because if we don't, we will be in the same position that they're in the UK and that they're about to be in Canada. Because the one thing we know for sure is that we can't stop. Because the purveyors of Islam and their progressive friends in the Democratic Party, and yes, even the Republican Party, will never stop either. And that's it for this time. Jan, I want to thank you for being on The Unpleasant Blind Guy again. Now, I hope you'll come back.
I will do, and thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate each and every one of you listeners. Thank you very much for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2017. Anno Domini.